or no. Just let me know. Just take your time. Young nigga, my nigga, stay on your grind.
Hi guys, it's Bella Networking Guru, and I'm in New York City, and I can't wait to start my live New York show. So thank you for joining. You are watching the Bella Networking Facebook show, and I think without further ado, I'd love to introduce my guests. So Peter, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Peter Frank. I'm a CPA in New York, and I'm a partner with the firm of Cornick, Garber, and Sandler.
So Peter, thank you so much for coming on my show, because I've known you now for a good little while, about 4 years, 3 years, 4 years, yeah. So, and again, thank you for giving me my first break in New York when I did my first event. So, tell me, I'd love to find out, you've been in the accountancy world for over 40 years.
Almost 40 years.
Yes. So how did it all come about with the business?
All right, so it's a cool story. So I'm a musician.
Oh, wow.
I won't even say hobby, by profession, but not livelihood.
Because I think you might have mentioned it.
I used to have my livelihood from music before I became an accountant. And back when I was in my mid to late 20s and I was playing music actively, I had just taken an apartment back when rents were cheap, but $250 a month was a lot back in 1977.
Probably like $2 million now.
Right. And I was doing club dates with a disco band playing saxophone, and we did big gaudy discos in New Jersey and Brooklyn.
Wow.
We wore costumes and boas.
Oh my goodness.
And it was a lot of fun. And that was what was making me money. I was doing other music that I was more interested in, but it was a lot of fun. And then the band broke up. And a year worth of bookings gone, and I had to pay $250 a month in rent.
So didn't you think about going solo?
What happened was my father, who was an accountant and a lawyer, said, you know what, it's tax season starting. I can use you in the office. So he offered me a job, and I said, well, I don't know if I can do that every day. I'll do it 3 days a week. So I started working part-time during busy season.
Yeah.
And I took to it, and I liked it, but I also liked it because I didn't have to do music gigs that I didn't like.
Oh, you could
and
choose.
At the same time, I was had started a kind of a new wave punk rock and roll band called the Clone Tones, and we were writing original music and playing the downtown scene, and we were hoping to get noticed and signed to a record deal. So I said, let me do this accounting, I can make enough money to pay the rent. And what happened was a lot of things all at once. 1980 came around, the personal computer came out.
Oh my goodness.
And we went and bought one for the firm. Nobody used them yet. And accountants didn't know about that.
IBM as well?
Yeah, IBM PC. Okay. We got one of the first IBM PCs. And I took to it because I saw it as a way to get rid of the drudgery of doing accounting, of adding up long columns of numbers. And I did really well with it, and I would advise clients on how they could use a personal computer. Plus, I was getting clients to do tax returns for musicians and artists and downtown people who would say, you're like a normal guy, I can talk to you. You do my taxes?
Yes.
So I started to build up a practice back then.
Okay.
And
self-taught? Did you go on courses?
No, so my father said, after about 9 months, he said, look, I can only teach you so much. You're going to have to go back to school. So I went to NYU for a master's in taxation.
Really?
Which I didn't quite finish, but I took enough credits to take the CPA exam. And I was a busy guy. I was busy working 3 days a week, going to school 2 days, playing music.
Living the time of your life.
Having a great time. It was the 80s then, and the 80s were a lot of fun. And I kept hoping that I would be successful with the music. But the accounting thing became a little more serious, making more money. I also started teaching accountants. I put on a lot of seminars how to use this thing called the computer. And then all of a sudden...
You should have teamed up with IBM.
Well,
you probably made more money.
All of a sudden this thing called email, and I'll never forget, I'm teaching a class, and this guy says, what do I need email for? I don't even need a fax machine. And I used to try and tell these older accountants this
Do you know,
stuff's
I'm
gonna really
thinking
help
you should
them.
be in a museum to know that you were around when the emails came out, you know.
Yep, the internet, and I mean, I taught computers before Windows when it was DOS. And I love teaching, and that was a highlight of my early career doing that. And I've always liked teaching; it's always been fun. And I never stopped playing music.
Right, that's good. You still kept the passion. So, what was the point when you decided, right, I can really make a career of this? I can get more clients. Let me try and get more involved with the accountancy.
It just kind of happened as time went on. There wasn't a point in time where I made that decision, because I was doing it more and more, and then the years just started rolling by, and then I had my first child in 1989, and I liked getting paid, and I started working full time, still doing music, started doing more interesting music, and I wasn't as concerned with getting a record deal anymore, because I also knew the record industry had changed. And the years just kind of started to go by. And then
you stayed at the same firm,
Cornick.
What happened?
This was before Cornick, Garber, and Sandler. This was my father's firm. We were small. We were 6 people. We grew to 11. Frank and Zimmerman and Company. My name was there, so people thought it was me, but it was my father. We then merged in with Cornick, Garber, and Sandler about 20 years ago. So I was 20 years there, and then 20 years ago we came to Cornick, Garber, and Sandler.
Okay, fantastic. So what I'd like to cover for some of the UK audience and the UK entrepreneurs, what is the role of an accountant? Because it's a bit different to the role of the accountant as a lawyer or in London.
Sure.
So if a new business comes into the US, how do you help them, your role compared to the lawyer?
Okay, so the 2 most traditional roles for an accountant, for a CPA, are preparing income taxes and preparing financial statements.
Sure. And just to clarify, what is a CPA?
Certified Public Accountant.
Right.
So going back to, I think, 1896, and maybe actually it was later when the accounting profession got the mandate to certify audits of companies. So in the UK, I think any business that has more than $1 million in revenue has to have an audit. In the United States, the only companies required to have audits are public companies or those who have certain mandates from third parties, but they may want financial statements that aren't audited.
Right.
So the CPA is in a position to provide independent analysis of the analysis is not really the right word. We will give an opinion as to whether the numbers present fairly the financial position of the company.
Okay, I understand. So we would do that as like our end of year
well, that's
accounts.
right. So we do that. We don't do that for everybody. We do it for those businesses that need it.
Right.
And then we prepare income tax returns. Now, income tax returns in the United States can be more complicated because, first of all, we don't have that weird date, like what, April 5th?
Yes, our financial year. Yes.
Right. Which I just learned recently came about because your Inland Revenue started the day after that, so they had to close off the year, so they closed it off for the day before.
Yes.
But anyway, income tax returns here are both federal and states. So every state that you operate in might have an income tax return. You may do business in multiple states. You might have multiple state tax returns.
So you have to do more than one.
That's right.
Got
so
you.
That's a big part of what we
Right.
do. Then there can be sales tax returns. New York City has something commercial rent tax. These are things that accountants will do for a business.
Sure.
But that's just the traditional work.
Right.
I call it compliance.
Right.
The real stuff we do, the meatier things, and the more important stuff, is we help people manage their business from both a compliance point of view. How do they need to interact with the world in terms of reporting? And what do they need to understand in terms of the process of business? Call it business process. So I have a lot of experience in the area of business process because I started using accounting software in the days when they were new for microcomputers. And I would set up businesses with an accounting program. Right now everybody knows QuickBooks, but back in the day there were many programs. And they were more complicated because it was the early years of the microcomputer. and everything was a little more complicated. So I would teach people not only how to use them and get them set up, but we would try and coordinate the process of the software with the process of their business. If the software would allow you to do something better than you're doing it now manually, let's change your process internally. If we need to tailor the software to manage the process that runs your business better, well, let's make modifications in the software.
Got you.
So part of my designation of being a CPA is I also have something called a CITP, Certified Information Technology Professional. And that's just a designation that I met the requirements of the AICPA, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, in that I understood business and technology and how they marry together.
Yeah, very much. I think that's definitely got to be one of your high winning tools there. So for the audience, especially UK viewers, when a new business presents themselves to you, there are a number of different types. If you could just give us an overview of the different types.
So hopefully someone's going to come to us before they even form their new business, because there may be different ways to form. It could be a traditional corporation. Sometimes it's called a C Corp because it falls under subchapter C of the Internal Revenue Code. That's a traditional corporation. Then there's something called an S corporation. Now that's a flow through, like a partnership, in that the corporation doesn't pay income tax but reports its profit or loss at the shareholder level.
Got you, yeah.
That's got certain requirements, certain strict rules. You can't be a foreign owner, many other things for that. Then there's LLCs.
Yes, I keep hearing that one. It's like the most popular one, is it?
LLCs become very popular because it's very easy to maneuver with. You don't have to issue shares of stock. You can just have an agreement that says, by agreement, you own 40%, I own 60%, you put this money in, I put this in, you want to take on a new member, and they call them members.
Members, not shareholders.
Not shareholders. You want to take on a new member, you just change the agreement.
Okay.
It's got a lot of flexibility to it, and it still protects the investors in the company from liability.
So at that new formation stage, do you give advice on which company formation it should be, or is that the lawyer's responsibility?
Well, we like to be in discussion with the client or potential client, with the attorneys too. So the attorneys do some things very well. We think we understand business better than most attorneys do, so we want to be involved and help them as a business understand, so where are you headed? What are your plans?
Got you.
What are you looking to do?
I understand.
Do you want to bring your company public?
Yes.
In 5 to 10 years, try to? You want to be a C corporation.
So I understand. So it's not uncommon then for a new business to maybe have a meeting with yourself as the accountant or CPA and the lawyer in the room as well to decide.
It's a good idea. We'll also tell people, call us first and we'll tell you if you need the lawyer.
Sure. What are then some of the, because I know you've got so many years of experience and seen a lot, what are some of the interesting difficulties you've seen, mistakes that some businesses have made earlier on that maybe they should have thought through, especially at the formation stage?
So, quite a few. They haven't filed all the compliance documents properly. Maybe they formed two companies, one to do something in particular, and they got an ID number for both companies, but they're using the wrong ID number for one to do something. And that's something we would look at and see if that was happening, or maybe they didn't. Let me think of a good disaster. Well, for example, something like sales tax. Now you have a VAT, which is a little different. A VAT is charged at every stage of production and then gets reimbursed until the end. Sales tax is only charged to the end user of a product. But if a company needs to collect sales tax because they're selling locally products that are required to charge sales tax on, if they didn't register for sales tax, then the statute with which the government can go after them goes on forever. And I've seen businesses that 5 years after formation, they didn't know they may have owed sales tax because maybe their situation was a little more unusual. And then we tell them, well, you know what, you really should have been doing this. Now the government go back to the beginning of your formation because you never filed to register. So we would, from the beginning, we would help the company see, do they need to register for that or not? I've seen some disasters.
Wow, okay. And also, what is the role of the bank account? Do you advise and help to open the new bank account, or once it's open, can the new business go and do it themselves? And what do they need to
They
open
don't really
a bank
need
account?
us to open a bank account.
Okay.
We can be helpful. I mean, we can be helpful in a lot of things.
What documents do you need to open a
I
bank
think
account?
you need your articles of incorporation or
Sure, similar to
formation.
London.
Yeah, you probably need something signed by the secretary of the company. You need some identification. I'm not sure what else. You might need a letter from the approval from the board of directors to open a bank account.
Sure, okay.
Not
Excellent.
that much different.
So now you've worked for the new accountancy for 20 years and it's grown substantially. So how many employees do you have now?
We're about 50 people,
Wow.
36 professionals,
Mm-hmm.
8 partners,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
we're a pretty good organization.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what would you vision or see for the future, maybe in the next 3 to 5 years? Where are you guys hoping to grow or expand?
Well,
or
in
not?
3 to 5 years, I'm going to be 68, 69 years old, and I am probably going to be
Looking at more technology that's coming out.
So because of technology, I'm hoping over the next number of years to ease back on
Okay.
actually the time I spend doing my work, so I can spend more time doing my music.
Okay.
Because I'm ready for a late stage new career in music.
Excellent.
So right now I'm just about finishing up recording an album of my own material.
Really?
I've been in the studio since April.
Wow.
And it's going great, and I have a record release party already planned for November. CD is going to be out.
Oh, I'll be
And-
back in UK then. That's a shame. I'd have loved to come.
They usually say don't quit your day job,
Yeah.
but who knows? I may get lucky.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question, because I always ask my guests, what would you do as
That's
a
it.
hobby? So you've already got it all set. What
I
you
got it
like.
all set.
So how about international? Maybe come over to the UK, come to
I
the
plan
O2,
to.
maybe, or
So
Wembley Stadium.
one of the things that happened in my career when we merged our firms over to here, I became involved in our International Association of Accountants. Marty Cornick, our managing partner, asked me to get involved there, and I really took to that. And a lot of my practice is foreign persons and businesses coming to the U.S. I help them navigate the waters here. So then I do even more for a business than I would if they were just a local business, because they don't understand a lot of what goes on
Definitely.
here. So I think I can be pretty
Sure.
helpful in that way. And yes, I'm very interested in going overseas.
That would be great. So I'd just like to ask you, maybe if you can give 2 tips for non-US businesses that do want to come into the US. What should they think about? I'm going to put your details on the website information. So if a non-US business wants to come into the US, what do they need to think about?
So they need to do some planning. As individuals who are going to run the business, are they planning to live here? Are they planning to stay here? What are their goals from that? Do they need to get a visa? I can help them, direct them to immigration attorneys who can help figure out the type of visa if that's the case. Should they apply for a green card or not? Be aware that if you become U.S. tax resident, which either is because you have a green card or you've spent more than 183 days here, and there's a formula over 3 years, you may become U.S. tax resident and be taxed on your worldwide income.
So
We're
a
one of
lot
only 2 places in the world that will tax people on their worldwide income.
Yes, and that's the income on other countries then.
Well, that's right. So
US
if
as well, that
you're
people
from
don't realise.
if you're from the UK and let's say you have you sold a business,
Yes.
and you have $1 million sitting there being invested, or $10 million,
Yes.
and it's got earnings. Now you come here to start a business in the U.S. and you spend more than the requisite number of days here. All of a sudden, the income that you're earning in the UK will be taxed.
Yeah, and just to point out that actually that's another example for example, if you come into the US and you have those amount of days, and say for example you have property in the UK and you're getting revenue from the property, that can be taxable as well in the US.
That's right. Now, the UK and the US have a tax treaty. Many countries, most countries have a tax treaty with the US. The tax treaty is designed to prevent double taxation. It looks to see where is the source of the income, who's entitled to the tax. But you have to know that the reporting is required, and there are some things that are taxable in the US but not taxable in the UK. If that's the case, you're going to pay the tax here.
Right.
I had somebody from France, actually. They sold their primary residence and made a lot of money, but they were actually a US citizen who hadn't been living here for 20 years, didn't think they needed to file. They did, and they owed a lot of tax in the US because there is no French tax on selling your primary residence.
Sure. So guys, thank you for watching the show. If you have any questions for Peter regarding tax, accountancy, how to set up a business in the US, please write a comment below, and I'll also put Peter's company name and website so
I'd be happy to help.
Yeah. And guys, if you are watching on YouTube, if you actually see the video link on above, you'll be able to watch other videos and other interviews that I've done earlier this year. And guys, thank you so much for watching.